What's going on, guys? Happy New Year. I hope you didn't party too hardy. I realize I look like crap. But I wanted to go ahead and make a video, start the year off strong, and cover the UFC's voting for, best knockout, best submission, so on and so forth. Because there were a lot of good choices this year. There was a lot of competition. There was some pretty, close voting polls. But I felt like there were some people that were left out. I felt like there were some people who got the win that maybe shouldn't have. Um, and I just wanted to go through today and make a video discussing that. But we can go ahead and jump right in. I have the chart here on my monitor. You can see this is the full thing that they did. They put it all throughout the month of December, and I figured we go through it. So we'll start off with the knockout category. Now, when you look at the knockouts this year, I think the contenders for knockouts were pretty good. There was a couple that honestly could have been there. The Almeida KO, I think, where he was getting hurt by, was it Abdul Rakhasan or something, slept him back out cold. That honestly should have been there, maybe over Smith versus Kazama. Maybe not. I'm not sure, but obviously, Topuria Oliveira, that was a great knockout. There's a lot of stakes on the line. That's for the lightweight belt. He did it in round one, made it look easy, like halfway through it. Mauricio Huffy versus Bobby Green, that was insane. The way he set up a hook into a spinning roundhouse kick off the side of Bobby's head that just chinned him out cold. Amazing stuff from him. Obviously, we saw the Bellator guy Pico trying to do some TJ Dillashaw movement and come in on Aaron Pico. Not Aaron Pico, sorry, Lerone Murphy, and Lerone timed a perfect spinning back fist that slept him out cold. We saw that. And then Smith versus Kazama, I have a hard time remembering that KO, but obviously I'm sure it was a killer KO if it's in this, category. So the general consensus I think I've seen from the voting polls was Topuria versus Oliveira, which I don't quite agree with, and I'll tell you why. Now, I'm a huge Oliveira fan. I'm a huge Topuria fan, but you have to put some weight behind these wins. And while it was a good knockout, it was credible. Oliveira's getting up there in age. He's never been known for being able to take a big hit without going down. He's known for being chinny, and he wasn't being smart. He was going into the pocket with a shorter power puncher, so it wasn't like revolutionary. Obviously, it was brutal. It was really sad to see Olives get finished. We're all big fans of him. It was a decent knockout, but in my opinion, it was nothing special. We'll get to the next one, but it was just, what was it, like a one, and then he like kind of feinted the one and then came through with like a hook two, or like just a straight through, and knocked Oliveira down out cold. It was nice. It was really nice. It was technical. It was great. It really added a lot to Ilya's resume, but personally, I don't find that KO of the year contender. You'll know who I'm picking in the order that we're about to go down from. I'm gonna exclude Smith versus Kazama because I'm a casual and I can't remember that. But Aaron Pico versus Lerone Murphy, that was an amazing KO. Pico was looking good. He was looking sharp. He was aggressive. He was pushing Lerone back. He was winning the exchanges up to that moment. And he got baited in, and it was a very good spinning elbow knockout. I want to say that night there was one before or after that fight as well. Like, they were back-to-back spinning elbow KOs, so it was a lot of hype. Okay, I take that back. The comeback for Almeida versus Rock Hassan is on here. I just saw that. But the spinning elbow is good, but we've seen quite a few this year. It's really, put its mark on the UFC in 2025. Like, who was it? Diego Lopez over Gene Silva. That could have been, if it was like a clean KO, that could have been KO of the year contender. It was a TKO. But we've seen a few spinning elbows, and they're very impressive. They're very cool. But I'm all about, new stuff. Maybe stuff we haven't seen, stuff we barely see. You're starting to see a lot more spinning elbows. People are making a good game out of them. Gene Silva himself was just spamming them against Lopez before he got countered. Which brings me to my pick for the UFC knockout of the year, Mauricio Huffy versus Bobby Green. I don't think this should be a competition. I understand Bobby Green is not the toughest opponent to say you knocked out, but he's always had a decent chin. Granted, in his recent fights leading up to this fight, he did get knocked out pretty badly by Jalen Turner, but he's always game. He's got pretty good striking defense. You rarely ever see him put out cold. It's usually a ground and pound thing. And Huffy set this up, dude. Huffy was style on him. They were, 50-50. Green was kind of doing his emoting, do what he does. And then just the sheer technicality that Huffy had to do the left hook to make him bait, and then from there throw a spinning back kick. That is absolutely revolutionary. I'll be walking around my house, and if I find a room with enough space, any moment's notice, I'm throwing that move for no reason at all. And 9 out of 10 times, I'm slipping and busting my ass. Mauricio Huffy's knockout over Bobby Green was honestly a once in a decade moment. Last time we saw something like that, it was it Terry Edom versus Edson Barboza? Just amazing stuff by Mauricio Huffy. I truly do think that just the innovation of that KO, the hype behind it, the place went insane. How perfect it was. He didn't even land the full foot to the face. He landed like the bone of your foot like across Bobby's bald head. It was amazing to see. It truly was like something we have never seen to that level of technicality and setup before, and that's why it's my knockout pick of the year. We'll go ahead and move on to submission of the year. Now, I think the general consensus is Islam Makhachev versus Renato Moicano, in which he won by round one Darce. I don't agree with this. We'll go to the other ones as well. I mean, Harrison versus Pena. Harrison was just getting the Americano over Pena. Silva versus Mitchell was really good, but we've seen recently Bryce Mitchell's not as good as we previously thought. And Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley 2, where he secured a north-south choke, which was very impressive because in the first fight he couldn't finish him. And this was one of the first times we've seen real finishing instinct out of Merab, because he's usually known for decision, grinding up against the cage, knees against the thigh, so on and so forth. But I think there's someone in here that deserved it that isn't in here. And I know that's kind of crazy to say, but I think when you give context to the win, the domination that he put on before it happened, I guess we'll talk about the Makhachev one first before I reveal my pick, because Makhachev, obviously, great submission, but it's a day's notice. Granted, Islam's known for his, like, technique, like, perfect Darce, which, cool, but it's Moicano. I had someone comment on my last video, shout out to them, respect to them. They were saying a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist. Moicano is not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist. Just because he's Brazilian doesn't mean you can slap a Jiu-Jitsu specialist on him. He's a well-rounded guy. He's got decent striking. He's got, slick ground game, but what UFC fighter doesn't have a good ground game for the most part? You have to. And I just didn't hold a lot of credit to this. Moicano obviously looks scared going into this fight. He's supposed to be fighting Beneil Dariush. That's a real big step up from Dariush to Makhachev. And it looked like he kind of had his shoulder popped out at one moment. It was a bit lackluster. If Makhachev did this to Arman Tsarukyan, submission of the year, no doubt. But this is Renato Moicano, the guy who lost to, he did lose to Beneil when he fought him. He lost a boring decision. I mean, it just doesn't hold a lot of weight. But, yeah, it just doesn't hold a lot of weight. That's really the only way I can put it. And I guess I'll go ahead and reveal my pick. It's Sean Brady's win over Leon Edwards. Now, you might be going, what? A lot of people don't remember that fight happened because it was so painful for Leon fans to watch, because Leon got dominated on the ground. He was getting beat up, ragdolled, beat up on the feet because he feared the takedown. And they ended up, I want to say, in this half guard position, maybe lockdown half guard, where Brady was not only threatening a far side Kimura or a key lock, he also was threatening a one-arm guillotine, and I think just ground and pound too. But he got a one-arm guillotine over Leon Edwards. It was a former champion and beat Kamaru Usman twice. He got a KO in a fight he was losing, and then he decisively beat him by decision. There was not a huge stock drop in Leon Edwards, and he didn't just knock him out. It's not like you can say he was chinny. He submitted him with a one-armed guillotine. Those aren't easy to get. That's why the only reason people ever got him was because Uriah Faber was doing them back 10, 15 years ago when MMA was not that developed. It was very impressive with the control that Brady had over Edwards, making him think about the guillotine, making him think about the arm isolation, and making him think about the ground and pound. He just overwhelmed him and found one of the slickest submissions there, a one-arm guillotine. I think that's insane. If I'm misremembering that fight, I'm an idiot, but I'm pretty sure he got it like that. So that's honestly my pick for submission of the year. I can understand a Makhachev pick. All of these are decent submissions. We didn't see anything crazy this year. We didn't see like a twister. We didn't see like a calf slicer. We didn't see a banana split, So I just put a lot of weight behind the Brady win over Leon Edwards. I honestly thought that I should have gotten the title shot, but obviously 170 was a bit shaken up. I just think the dominance that he did it with, the control and precision that he had it with, and a one-arm guillotine is not easy. To get that leverage, dude, props to Sean Brady. We'll go ahead. You see, they have comeback, debut, comeback. Like, they flipped the comeback and debut for one line, so we're going to do comeback first. There was a lot of good fights this year. Like I had mentioned, comeback Almeida versus Razak Al Hassan. I don't know if I would say that that's comeback of the year, but that was definitely one of the KO of the year, contenders. If Huffy didn't get it, just because of the sheer chaos that one was, even Brundage versus Marquez, Almeida, it was a close fight. He was getting hurt, stings, and then hits Razak. Razak goes limp, cold on the canvas. It was insane. Very good comeback, but it wasn't like Almeida was ever down and out at one point. He was still going. Bannon versus Tomar was good, but I'm not even gonna mention that. Now here's the problem. Sorry, it's cold and my nose is stuffy. Yuri Prohaska versus Khalil Roundtree was a really good fight, a really good comeback. Yuri was never really in trouble, but he was decisively losing these rounds. However, Brundage was in a lot of trouble against Marquez, and I really do think Brundage and Marquez should be the comeback of the year. But with Mark Smith, I think it was stopping the action mid, swing to put a mouthpiece back in, that kind of killed the hype of it. So they're honestly neck and neck. And I think you could technically label Brundage more of a comeback because he was hurt. He was rocked, like stumbling, and Yuri never was. But I think just the sheer intensity, the emotion, you felt a shift in the room. You could honestly put Ivo Aslan versus Iwo Barzoaniski on this thing, dude. Like, that was great. And that happened a few weeks ago. But I think when you watch, Prohaska versus Roundtree, I remember watching that. I remember watching round 1, round 2 going, oh, shit, Yuri's kind of getting pieced up here. Khalil's too fast. But around halfway, towards the end of round 2, you start to see Khalil get tired a bit. Yuri started getting his movement going, started bobbing, samuraiing. Like, you felt the mood shift. You felt the samurai enter the room, and he just started to put it on him. And then it got sloppy, it got aggressive. And it was a dog fight, Prohaska just trudging forward, landing elbows, hooks in the pocket, Khalil giving everything he had in one last overhand elbow that did nothing to Yuri. It was insane. The hype that I was experiencing was unlike anything before, unlike anything in any other Yuri fight. Truly, because I was so happy for him to he says it, that there will be a storm, and he puts a storm on Roundtree and just sets up the perfect KO. He does a 1, a 2, and a strategic pause to make Khalil kind of think, is that the end of his combination? So he drops his right hand, and then he shovels that left hook in, sends Khalil like a tree getting chopped down in the forest, face first to the canvas. He bounces. It was insane. Now, the cope of Khalil fans after this was a bit annoying about Khalil would have won if he didn't gas. Well, I don't know if you know how gassing works. It's not just because you're out of shape. And we've all heard this sob story about Khalil being out of shape and now he's in shape. So I'm not going to blame his gas tank. You know what I'm going to blame? Yuri putting that fucking pressure on him and hitting him with nasty teeps to the body. You got to use your brain when you're watching a fight. And the damage you inflict on your opponent can inflict, bad things on their gas tank and their cardio and their mental strength to keep going in this dogfight. And nobody's going to outdog Yuri. Not in a fight like this. So that was there was just so much emotion. There was so much drive behind this comeback because you're like, Yuri was so close to the belt. He only lost to Pereira. And then if he lost to this, it's like, oh, that's it. He's done. If he lost to Roundtree, no way he's ever getting back up there. But he beats Roundtree. He just comes back and does it. And there was just so much emotional value behind that win. And that's why it's my comeback of the year. If you agree, disagree, Brundage versus Marquez really could be up there. Let me know in the comments. I got an insane amount of feedback on the last video. Some negative, but some willing to have a good conversation with me. And I really appreciate all of y'all for that. And I'd love to continue these conversations. We'll move on to debut of the year. Their first pick was Ateba Gautier versus, I think it's Jose Medina. I'm not giving him that. Jose Medina was a punching bag for 3 rounds and just had a really strong, chin. I want to say he's Mexican. A lot of Mexican fighters are known for their chin, their grit. He got put down but got back up. I don't know if it was a finish. I think it went to a decision. Ateba Gautier, a freak, and they've kind of lay-upped him a few more matchups than I'd like to see him have. It was a good debut, but not impressive. And then you have Quillian Salkild versus Anshul Jabli. I think this won debut of the year, which in all terms of meme aspect, I love it. Quillian redeemed it. And he KO'd Anshul Jabli bad in round 1. That was so hype. But I don't put a lot of quality over the opponent that is Anshul Jabli because he hasn't aged well. But I'm a huge fan of Quillian, so he's up there. I really got to kind of think to myself how I feel about this. Debut, Malcolm Wellmaker versus Cameron Simon. Now, if you know ball as an MMA fan, you just know the sport, I think you kind of have to give this one debut of the year because I don't think it was in an arena. I think it was in the Apex or just like a early arena, so there wasn't a lot of, people there for it. But this was such a high level fight. I mean, Cameron Simon trains with Dricus Du Plessis. He's a mainstay. He obviously hasn't looked great in some outings, but he's been put up against absolute killers. And, a fellow Georgia native representing it in Malcolm Wellmaker, getting that nasty slip hook KO, putting Simon down. That truly was a great debut to have against a guy like Simon. So it's a bit weird in a sense of, do I favor the hype and the meme ability that came out of the Anshul Jabli versus Quillen Salkild fight? Or do I favor the absolute skill level of Malcolm Wellmaker versus Cameron Simon? And to be honest, I really don't know. Sorry, my mic keeps like moving a bit funny. This is tough. I kind of want to pick both, in all honesty, but I don't know, man. It's just so difficult because I do love the meme that is Quillen Salkild redeeming it over Anshul Jabli. But I know the absolute skill level that was Wellmaker versus Simon. But Simon also didn't look great in that fight at all. I'm going to give it to Quillen Salkild. Malcolm Wellmaker, you're right up there. You've looked good this year. No stock drop in that loss to Ethan Ewing. It was short notice, and he's a killer as well, and you did good in that fight. But I guess I'm going to have to give it to Salkild because he did it within the first few seconds. He didn't even let the fight get going. And Malcolm Wellmaker, that fight went on for like 1-2 rounds. But Simon really never had an insane amount of offense. He honestly was kind of just surviving for the time being, landing what shots he could. But he got put down with a knee. It was just a tough night for Simon at the office. And I think just how you fight kind of defines your debut of the year. And I understand Anshul Jabli probably isn't anything to write home about. But to be able to get him out of there, within the first minute, I think even within the first 30 seconds, with like the first shot you land, I think is pretty impressive and probably holds the same amount, if not a little bit more worth, over Wellmaker decisively kind of breaking Simon down over 1 to 2, maybe 3 rounds, I think it was, and then KOing him. So again, Wellmaker, you're right there next to him. Honestly, I'd put y'all both in there if I could. But I guess I have to pick one in this argument. So I'm going to go with Quillen Salkild versus Anshul Jabli. We'll move on to the final thing, the main event of this year. Now, if I'm not mistaken, 317 was Topuria versus Oliveira, I think. We're not going to put 319 in there. That card was not that strong. And like I said in my last video, Chimaev did not deliver in that fight. It was a terrible way to end the night. It was boring, and I stand on that. So we're not going to put UFC 319 in the mix. UFC 320 was good. I think it was Pereira-Onk rematch, which had me so hype. So that's good. UFC 322 was a really good card, but the co-main and main event really disappointed. And I think UFC 322 won. There's a comment off to the side here on Twitter that I don't have in the frame of my OBS, but this guy is talking about Islam's on there twice, ridiculous, and an easy win against Moicano. Get the fuck. This guy gets it. No, yeah, I'm not putting 322 in there because it was a good card. But the co-main was Valentina Shevchenko camping half guard, camping crucifix, just being boring. And I'll be honest, Makhachev was doing more of the same. It was domination, but I'm going to critically think here and say that it just wasn't the greatest ending to an event that was pretty decent to begin with. So 322's out of there, 319's out of there. Now we're comparing 317 versus 320. Now, I'll be honest. I can't remember if I ranked 317 over 320 or vice versa. They're both neck and neck. I remember they had really good bodies building up to the card. But I think if we're just going to go off main event and kind of how it went here. Sorry, dude. This is bad. I think I'm going to go with 320. Because, this is very unprofessional of me. But let me look up UFC 317. I want to make sure that's Oliveira Topuria. Yeah. It was Oliveira Topuria. What was 320? Hold on. Because now I got to be right about this. Legendary stuff here on the MMA Dummy channel. I just want to be, consensus right. God, they're such good cards, dude. They're so... Oh, my God. They're such good cards. I think I have to put 317 at number one for my pick. As much as I personally enjoy Pereira's rematch win over Ankalaev, putting him out cold, making him quit and curl up in a ball on the canvas, 317 was just too good. Now 320 had a good card, but it opened with a pretty lackluster, first fight of the main card. Like it wasn't the strongest name value. And then when you look at 317, they had Elite Taporia versus Charles Oliveira. They had Pantoja versus Kai Kara France. He subbed him there. They had Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval. That was one of the fights of the year, if not the, when he knocked him down the end. That was honestly up there, if not better than UFC 300 ending. Maybe just not getting the knockout. You also had, I want to say, God, was it Khalil on there? That might have been on 320. That was on 320. On 317, you had Peyton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. So you got a lot of stock. Again, same thing as last category. They're neck and neck. I'd put both of them up there if I could. But I think when you compare the resume and the body of the cards, I think you have to pick 317. There's more name value. I think the card delivered a little bit more. There was more hype generated behind it. We were really worried that Ankalaev was just going to smother Pereira again for 5 rounds and do nothing and knee him up against the cage. But Pereira delivered, but 317 was just overall insane. You had a potential knockout of the year that people are consensus saying is. And more so. But yeah, I really do think that 317 was the best event. I guess we'll just go ahead and recap. I have Huffy Green knockout of the year. I have Sean Brady submission of the year. I have I have Yuri Prohaska for comeback of the year. I have Quillen Salkilled for debut of the year. And I have UFC 317 for the best event of 2025. Now, if you agree, if you disagree, if you think I'm an idiot, if you think I'm a genius, drop a comment. Let me know. We had a ton of engagement on the last video. It was super fun to respond to. I was at work just like typing away like, oh, this is great. But again, I hope y'all have a great 2026. Start the year off strong. We only got a few more weeks, UFC fans, before we're back in the mix. I'm hyped to get these card predictions out, card reactions again. I really want to start doing fight companions once I build up enough of a following to go live and see some people actually jump in. If you like the video, please comment, share, subscribe. It really helps me grow the channel, and I really want to build a community where we can have these discussions and make these videos and crack these jokes. It's a good time. Again, I hope y'all had a happy new year. Start 2026 off strong, and best to all of you, and see ya.